The survival instinct in yourself, it overpowers you. Get out of it as soon as possible if there is a terrorist attack. When I joined, my daughter was 5.5 months old. They are not judging you, but you feel judged. The discipline that comes with it, it's so immense. There is nothing, I say nothing, which is comparable to being in uniform.
It's all together, it's like a very enriching experience. As a woman officer in maritime defense, were there any challenges that you faced?
It teaches you, it leaves a mark in your personality, it leaves a mark in your experience. It makes you a different person altogether. That doesn't happen. In armed forces, that does not happen.
Behind every uniform are stories. Stories of courage, discipline, and sacrifice. In this Our Hero series, we talk about real experiences, the moments of strength, the challenges faced, and the values that shaped life of a service. I'm Priyanka, your host, and today we are honored to welcome Deputy Commandant Apurva Yadav, a distinguished officer who served for over a decade with the Indian Coast Guard. She has held key leadership roles including senior manager, logistics support and aviation operations, district HR and operations officer, and oversight of critical inventory and IT infrastructure projects. Apurva, a very warm welcome to the show. It's truly an honor to have you with us today and to share your incredible journey with our audience.
Priyanka, I'm very grateful that you have called me. I am excited to share my journey here.
Apurva, it's a privilege to speak to you today. Could you take us back to the beginning? What inspired you to join Indian Coast Guard? Were there any family stories, values, or defining moments that sparked your passion to serve the nation in uniform?
When we talk about inspiration, there are a lot of parameters that we have to keep in account. So, when you are in service, the pride of the uniform, the honor, the integrity, the discipline that comes with it, it's so immense. There is nothing, I say nothing, which is comparable to being in uniform. Coming to the part where inspiration, you asked about the inspiration part. When you are doing things larger than yourself, coming out of your comfort zone. I was associated with animal NGOs before this, Red Purse Society, and there were many animals that I used to foster, dogs, cats, many. So my interviewer, DIG Nangi, may he rest in peace, he has passed away. He asked me this question as to what will I be doing in service? Will if I get selected, how will I extend my annual support being in service? So it's all about being that bigger person, defining and expanding your purpose. I told him that you can still continue. You can still continue with your dream, with your purpose of the larger than life picture. You are extending your service beyond your comfort, beyond the animals, beyond the living beings. And now it comes to the nation. You're expanding your service, you are helping ability to the nation itself. So it took me a long time to convince him, but then yes, he was convinced in the end. What inspires me even now is helping people, is expanding that purpose even more now.
Apurva ji, take us through the highlights of your 10-year incredible journey, starting from the early days as a young officer to rising into senior leadership roles.
Okay, I started with the rank of assistant commandant. This is where everyone starts, an officer. My first posting was in Porbandar. The first position or the designation given to me was the staff officer to the commanding officer. So that staff officer teaches you a lot of roles itself because you handle a lot of responsibility there itself. What the commanding officer of the unit is holding, you have to know in and out of everything that happens in the organization at that time. And Porbandar was a very huge unit. Even now, it has around 5 or 6 units under it because Gujarat is a very big area. And the regional headquarters is in Ahmedabad. Then comes Porbandar, which is the district headquarters. And then comes all the small units. So at that time, it was not segregated into 2 units. Only Porbandar held all the units. The administrative and the operational control was held through Porbandar. So a single officer itself held a lot of duties.
Yeah.
Uh, so when you talk about my first posting, and when I think about my first posting, there were a lot of things that I learned about camaraderie, about leadership, about teamwork. Because all in all, as a staff officer, you have to deal with every other officer of the whole of Gujarat. So a lot of men, lot of officers, and lot of duties. So you're learning every day, every minute. I feel it. The laying of the antennas, the laying of the submarine cables, it all happened in front of me. And this is the year 2019 that we're talking about. So that was it. And then I was posted to three places in Port Blair, which were also very significant posts of mine. So the last posting of mine was in Kochi.
Okay.
And Kochi, I was posted to an aviation unit.
Okay.
So there I held the prominent position of the logistics officer. From handling IT infrastructure, IT projects, very big IT projects in an island, to moving back to mainland and now handling the aviation logistics. The journey was very different, I would say. I was learning new things every day. Again, it has been from all 10 years, if I say every day has been a learning path. It has been a milestone. But then this particular part, it was nothing compared to what I had endured or gone through in Porbandar or in Port Blair. The Kochi tenure was very different. It had its challenges, but at the same time, it was very, very good tenure. So this has been all those 10 years. But then all in all, if I have to summarize, it was all hits and trials. It was all about evolution. Every day I was learning about something. It was all about resilience. It was all about leadership. And from handling 2, 3 men under me, it was a group or a team of around 50 men which were under me. Then handling all the problems that come with it, because the cohesion and the camaraderie and everything has to be together when you want to get some outcome, and at the same time you have to see the welfare of those people also. So you're learning everything every day. I keep repeating the sentence again and again because that is what it is.
No, it is a continuous learning experience.
Yes, the journey itself, the post and the operational duties, the administrative roles, and anything role, any role for that matter in the armed forces, this is what teaches you things when you become what you are after 10 years. Because experience in an armed forces for any person, for a service person, for an officer, anyone, it teaches you, it leaves a mark in your personality, it leaves a mark in your experience, it makes you a different person altogether.
It's all together. It's like a very enriching experience. And
Yes, good things.
yeah. As a woman officer in maritime defense, were there any challenges that you faced, and how did you navigate through them?
Okay, when I talk about the challenges, it's mostly mental more than physical. Now, as somebody who's looking from outside the military, the armed forces aspect, they would think it's mostly physically. But I tell you, it's more mental.
Okay.
How? Then, for example, when you're understanding that you are capable, you're going through a training, you're going through a tenure, you're going through a posting, uh, it's more about believing in yourself. It's more about the fact that you can do this. And you have to constantly tell yourself that every day that you can do this, no, you can go through this. How? Again, I'll give an example more elaborately. You are posted in, like, for example, I was posted in Port Mother. You go into a room and you have more than 100 men, and you are the only lady. I'm not even counting the officers part. You are the only lady in that room, that conference room, or that building, or that particular unit. And I'll be honest, when I say this, it's a little overwhelming. Yes, because you are the only lady in the room. They are not judging you, but you feel judged.
Right.
To some extent, you do. So there's always that inner voice which tells you that you have to sit this way, you have to speak this way, and you have to perform this way. But then it's constantly over time you learn to put a cap over that inner voice. Why? Because nobody's judging you. You yourself are judging yourself. If you have a word with any army veteran, lady officer, they will tell you that the recurring problems that females have, they have stress fractures, they have from running, pelvic fractures, and it's a very common thing. because in a graduation, I'm an engineer. You go to your college, you study a lot of books, and then you come back. And there was nothing physical then. There's no training at that time. So immediately when you're settled into that environment after graduation, it's not that easy. So then running 50 kilometers every day, and in the camps it was with one insas on you have to carry an insas which is like 4 kgs, and in those very uncomfortable jumble boots you're running for 50 kilometers a day. It's not that easy. Especially in those that's very dense area, very green filled and hot and humid area of Kerala. Erimala it's called. It's in the Kannur district. And I had to repeat the training because I could not fulfill the mandatory day requirement because I had this pelvic fracture problem. I had to go through 2 particular semesters, 2 particular half yearly zones of Kerala. One was the monsoon and the other one was the spring term. The spring term was very horrible. So the spring term, it's a very hot and humid particular tenure, and the monsoon itself has its own challenges. When you're running in a puddle of water, and the water gets inside your turtle boots, and then you're running. So you, at the end of the day, when you remove your shoes, you will be able to understand what your feet has gone through. So again, a lot of challenges, and when you look at these things, when I talk about these things, I'm laughing about it because yes, it's a very horrific thing at that time. You would want to go back and run back to your home, but at this moment, after like 13 years later, I feel very privileged to have been part of it on that training. Coming to the part where female officers during their tenure, what are challenges they face? I think the first challenge that starts with is when you get married, when you have a child. Why? Because you have to choose between two things. You have a sense of responsibility towards your service, and then there is a small, clingy, anxious child waiting for you at home. So you have to you can't choose between the two. Both of them are important. So what do you do? When I joined, my daughter was 5.5 months old. So a very small baby. I was a feeding mother. And my husband, unfortunately, could not join me because he was going through some training of something else altogether. So it was like 2 years of his training and he was away. So single-handedly in a very different town, in an alien town. Fortunately, when I was in Gujarat, Gujus are very nice. So I had a very nice caretaker. But then even at the end of the day, your mind is occupied when you're in an office, your mind is occupied with your baby. And when you come back, I think these are the challenges which I'm talking about. Every female who leaves a child behind has to go through. It's not just in service. I think this applies to the real scenario also. Challenges are easy, but you have to look at it. You have to analyze the challenge. You have to read about it. There are policies in place. There are mentors to guide you. You have so many resources in hand that you can refer to. What I tell you is a challenge, being away from family.
Yeah.
Because Coast Guard itself means being posted in coastal areas. And I was born and brought up in Delhi. So all my family, all my relatives were in Delhi. And this was the first time that I had been away from them for a very long time. Once you become an officer, uh, you have to understand your responsibilities. You have to deep dive into whatever roles you have been given. So you just can't leave everything aside and go back to your family or say that you do not want to work, and that doesn't happen. In our courses, that does not happen. You have been trained to understand and follow through the orders that have been given by seniors. So you have that integrity factor in yourself that the order given by a senior is sacrosanct. You go through everything, and until and unless it is not prudent for the organization, the unit, for you to give a leave, and you have to take all the parameters also, whether there is a crisis, there's an emergency, and there's always an emergency. And my father was going through dialysis at that time. So during that time, it was becoming a little more uh, desperation out of me was coming that I wanted to go back to Delhi, and I could not. So I remember putting papers for transfer on the basis of compassionate grounds, and they were not approved because initially officers, the young officers, they are not posted in the central unit, which is in Delhi, and uh, these were the challenges. If you ask the challenges, it's from the separation from your family and that anxiety, the separation anxiety, it grows on you every day. Because the other challenges that you're talking about professionally, you can very well mitigate them. There are a lot of resources you have in hand, like I mentioned. A lot of things that you can yourself come up with. Even if you do not have those resources, you have that intellect to understand the task given to you, break it down, do whatever is possible to achieve the outcome which is desired. So that was not a challenge. The separation from the family was.
Tell us about a proud milestone that made you feel this is why I chose this path, and how these experiences helped you build resilience, positive outlook, and help you handle pressure effectively.
Okay, the proud milestone. There was this one moment during training when I was training in Indian Naval Academy, Edimala. I told you I had stress fracture at that moment. But what kept me going? Because the passing out parade, it happens every day. It goes on and it's very rigorous. They do it in the hot blazing sunlight of the Kerala atmosphere, and you know how the heat is there where it is in the springtime before the monsoons. And what kept me going was that the future envisioning of the moment when my parents would be sitting in the audience and looking at me, being in uniform, going through the parade, and just before the stripe shipping. Uh, that vision that was so empowering. It got me through that stress fracture. It got me through that training. It got me through everything, and the pain itself, it subsided, and I could concentrate on that particular portion of the training which was left. That was a very proud achievement that I could feel in my mind that yes, and I remember my sister used to write me letters. Uh, I was always been called the fragile child of the house, the sensitive one, the one who catches cold and cough very easily. And for them, for my parents to send me in an atmosphere with rabada and rigorous training and spring term, hot heat, running for 50 kilometers is a very humble thing. Even they were terrified. We have a lot of fights, me and my sister. But then, even then, she was filled with that overwhelming emotions, and she used to write me those letters because we are not allowed mobiles. There, the mobile is only given for a few hours on a Sunday or a Saturday. But she had never given those words ever in life, but I could feel that overwhelming emotions in those letters from her, and that's what kept me going. So that was the proudest moment for me when I chose to understand, chose to see that future vision of my parents sitting and being proud of me. That kept me going. So for him and my mother to be coming all the way from Delhi and seeing that parade, I wanted to make it happen. So I was proud of it. Proud of my achievements. I'm proud of my physical resilience. Proud of that I had gone through that 1 year of training, not just 6 months, the 1 year of training.
So, apart from routine operations, in let's talk about high stake situations. Can you share a moment when a crisis hit and how you and your team handled it?
I think it is a routine thing for high stake operations to come up every now and then. So imagine a scenario, and this is a real thing which I'm talking about. An ICG vessel, an Indian Coast Guard vessel chasing a suspected vessel, a search and rescue operation ongoing the next day, and the third day you encounter a very high stake environment where a crash has happened because LH and helicopter problems, they are you encounter these problems again and again, or a SAR operation where a fisherman is stranded at sea, a boat has toppled, fire in a particular oil rig. These things keep happening every day. So every day is a high stake environment. So these things, even when you're not on the ship, when you're not on the particular aircraft doing the SAR operation, on ground you have a lot of role to play. You have a lot of role. Every Coast Guard person has a role to play. This is a small service, and small service needs more responsibilities for one person. So because when you have a lot of people, when you have limited roles, so every person will be given small amount of roles. You have 100 roles, you have 10 people, every person will be given 10 roles, right? And if you have 100 responsibilities on one person, that one person will have to do all the 100 things. So it's all about intercepting, giving the probable outcome, and all of this in the sleepless nights, all of this in a very small amount of time. Why? Because lives are at stake. And you have to understand that these fishing operations and these anti-smuggling operations, they are a very, these are a huge thing, because then fisheries departments are also, they are also tied up with this thing. So these things keep coming up every day. It's not one scenario. It's an interpolation of so many things that have happened, especially at Porbandar, that kept us during the day and as well as the night.
Yeah, it sounds like a crisis happening like every other day. Apurva ji, what is one habit or principle from your Coast Guard days that you still follow today?
I think that would be resilience, clubbed with that mentality of not reacting immediately. It's the combination of both the things. Means if crisis hits you, for a common person, for a person who has not been in the armed forces, they would have that herd mentality. कि आप भाग रहे हो झुंड में. Stampede is a perfect example of it. You see people running, आग लगी, if there is an attack or anything, even if you do not have a reason, if you see people running, you'll probably run in that direction, right?
Yes.
So that 1 second pause, where to be, how to hide yourself, how to camouflage yourself, where to hit, you have to think through those things, and it cannot be done with not a calm mind. So that calm mind with resilience is something that every armed forces person will carry through after retirement, and that is what I'm carrying now.
Could you share one standout achievement or innovative approach that you are most proud of and the impact it had?
I was particularly good with managing complex tasks. When you have a complex task at hand, you break it down into simpler tasks, and you decipher what all elements have to be part of it. You plan it, then you understand the outcome of the process, and then you document it. I understood in like the 6th or 7th year of my tenure that I was particularly good with the documenting and the reporting part of it. Because as a Coast Guard officer, I had to collaborate in some moments with the outside stakeholders. These were the municipal corporations, these were the other armed forces, these were the fisheries, because there were a lot of common elements that one has to record. So I have that particular knack of writing, and writing it in a way that makes an impact on the other person. I understood the power of words there. And that is what led me to pursue mass communication immediately after retirement. Okay. So understanding the power of words and using it in a way where you can make an impact and help people in some way is now one of the things that I'm trying to do, and it has become part of my purpose. So that this is what had been like something like an eureka moment in the journey of those 10 years. And this was the administrative and the HR role that I was doing at that time.
Apurva ji, what motivated you to take on complex projects like setting up server systems? And could you briefly share how this journey unfolded?
So in my second tenure in Coast Guard, which was in Port Blair, I was the regional IT officer. Regional means the whole of Port Blair, along with the small islands, Campbell Bay and Digleyport, Mayabandar, all were under Port Blair. It was that period of time in 2019, the two service providers were Airtel and one was BSNL. And there was nothing beyond this. So the setting of VSAT antennas, the fiber optic cables within the islands, it was done in phases by both sides. So when I talk about the connection, the VSAT antennas and the connection of optical fiber network, it was for Coast Guard, for the Coast Guard network. It was not for normal public. So even then, it all happened in front of me because there were huge servers which had to be transported from the mainland to Port Blair and then to all these islands. So Diglik or Mayabandar and these places were still accessible by road. But Camel Bay is an island. It's a different area altogether, and coordinating and liaising with these units was again a little difficult. But all said and done, it was done in phases, and 1 or 2 years it was done. And it was an achievement not just for our unit, it was an achievement for the whole of Coast Guard. Because there are tri-services as well as Coast Guard at Port Blair. I'm not able to recall if they would they had done it or not, but then we had successfully planned it in a phased manner and in a very smallest possible amount of time. And our network of Coast Guard was set up by this.
Moving on, Apurva ji, what advice would you give to a young woman officer starting in Indian Coast Guard today, especially on building leadership, resilience, work-life balance, and along with that, continuous learning?
Okay, so then there is not one advice that I would want to give. There is like a plethora of messages that I would want to give the women officers throughout the armed forces. First would be to learn and be knowledgeable. And when you do that, be grounded in your approach. Because knowledge, learning, and intellectual capability sometimes overpower your intellect. And you tend to become a little overconfident. So be grounded, be kind, and most of all, the biggest of all, should be that one must be brave. And because you have it in you, the message that I want to give to them is that they need to remember that they have it in them. They need to be brave, and the bravery will be tested in those circumstances that they can't even fathom. These will happen at odd periods of time, in odd moments in the tenure. And that is when you need to remember that you've made it so far and you will be able to do again in the future better. So the biggest advice of all, encompassing the other things that I've already said, is the element of sisterhood. You can't even imagine the level of support one needs, the overwhelming factor, the challenges as a female officer, and what keeps you grounded, what keeps you going is that support, is that sisterhood. So be that person that a junior lady officer who has just been posted or someone needing some guidance can look forward to.
I believe every long service has its tough chapters. Could you share one personal moment of perseverance, how you navigated it, and how you took care of your mental and physical well-being during that time?
Being away from family is one thing, and taking care of a very small baby is another. And then balancing that your work, your personal life, coming back home to a very clingy and anxious baby. So much so that my child, she's 8 years old now, is still an anxious baby. So when they say that your sacrifices, a Fauji's sacrifice, an armed forces sacrifice, wo akele ka hota hai, no, it's not that. Your whole family is going through that sacrifice. Like I mentioned this about my daughter, those effects carry on. Because leaving her for 12 hours in a row, and then that too with the child was feeding. For a feeding mother, for a feeding child, that creates some problems. And then they linger on. And as an adult, you know how to navigate through those challenges. But as a child, it takes a long time for them to understand that you are there, the child is secure, the mother is not going anywhere. And these are some things which linger on. Your child and your family has to also go through these things. Okay. So this is one toughest phase of my life that I still remember. And I eventually understood how to navigate this part of motherhood, this part of work-life balance. I eventually got hold of it, but yes, that was a challenge in itself. But then finally, I'm over it. So it was during this challenge, it was during this phase that I realized how mental health is important. And I was attuned to spirituality. I was attuned to uh, understanding how mental health can progressively decline, and then how to cope up with it. Because what you are feeling, whatever cortisol levels are spiking in your brain, it will inadvertently affect your child also, especially when you're a feeding mother. So you'll have to take care of your mental as well as your physical health, which I eventually got hold of with time. But this was this phase that triggered that thing in me, that you have to take care of your mental health if you want to progress, if you want to be in a good state of mind, if you want your child to be a happy baby. This is how I, with passage of time and with understanding and with the knowledge of mental health, then I started deep diving into the mental health and the physical health aspect. How are they interrelated? And eventually, at this point of time, I've done so many courses on mental health. And that point of time, it was all uh, from normal magazines and these things, whatever resources I had, I could accumulate and then understand what mental health is. Now I understand it completely. But yes, those things also helped.
And since you mentioned that later on you were able to serve in the Indian Coast Guard along with a couple of lady officers as well, did they also provide you like support or like in the like let's say mental well-being phase?
Yes, I told you the second tenure when I was in Port Blair, because in Porbandar I was all alone. I was the only lady officer in my unit. But when I eventually moved to Port Blair, the place and the mental health, the physical health, the environment was a heaven in itself. Because in management, in leadership, there is one thing which is highlighted again and again. When you give the employees or the working force a big challenge, they are motivated more. Their mental health escalates. So I was the regional IT officer and was handling a very big challenge. Yes, I had my personal things to take care of. The baby, the small baby, the new place, the shifting and everything. Those are normal part and parcel of every armed forces personal lives. But the challenge and then the lady officers, there were so many, and we had, that is when that element of sisterhood comes into picture, and that support was so meaningful, was so strengthening, was so empowering. The senior lady officer as well as junior lady officers, we could bend out, we could be together, we could understand each other. And I remember when I couldn't take care of my baby, uh, one of my junior officers, she would take care of her, and even senior officers for that matter, the male officers also.
Apurva ji, as a woman officer in the Coast Guard, were there moments where you felt the added pressure to prove yourself in a demanding field?
Sometimes. But as they say that you are an officer first, a lady or a mother or whatever responsibilities you have second, it's all in your head. So you don't need to. You don't need to prove anyone anything. You need to prove it to yourself. So the pressure can always be converted into focus. And that focus converts to performance. Performance speaks for itself. This is how you navigate a high pressure scenario. It's all in your head.
Apurva ji, after more than a decade of dedicated service, transitioning out of uniform must have brought a mix of emotions. Could you share what that felt like, the hardest part, the unexpected joys, and how did you find purpose in this new chapter?
The hardest, you ask. Everything was hard when I left service. Why? Because the service shields you from certain things that once you get out, you understand. So that eagerness, that purpose that I wanted to fulfill when I get out of service was immediately made invisible, uh, because I understood those pressures. Those pressures were immediately bombarded on my head immediately after I got out of service. And these were the struggles that the service had shielded me from. Because, like an umbrella on your head, and you get out of that umbrella, and that rain will pour on your head, and you understand that that umbrella had a lot of impact on you. That is what the service was for me. Keeping that aside, your purpose, the purpose you asked about, the purpose would always be the same. It is to serve. Whether it's serving the nation, whether it's serving a group, whether it's serving a particular species, animals. Now it has expanded in a way where the purpose has been same throughout. It has expanded in a way where I want to use the experience, the leadership capabilities, as well as my new knowledge in mental health, mass comm, writing, everything in a way where I can again serve, but in a grander way. So this is how things have transformed from there to here.
Apurva ji, as we wrap up, what final thoughts would you like to share with our viewers, especially women who are aspiring to be a part of armed forces?
So I'll give this message to both men and women, the aspiring population of India who wants to be in the armed forces. It is to have that purpose. If you do not have the purpose, you would not be tethered to the purpose of your forces, whether you are in Army, Air Force, or Navy, or Coast Guard, or any other paramilitary force for that matter. You would have that patriotism for country. But if you do not have an individual purpose, you would always sway away from the collective goal in general. And your collective goal should be in alignment with your personal goal. So, not to make it complex, but I'll say it simply. If your purpose is somewhat similar to what the armed forces purpose is, go for it. Otherwise, think it through. It has its honor, it has its pride, it has a lot of variables which the common civilian life will not have. But once you get into it, that honor and pride and integrity, the sense of responsibility will guide you through this journey. But it's all about that purpose.
So we'd also love a shout out to your Coast Guard team, family, or anyone who supported you in your journey.
I'm grateful to all the mentors, my commanding officers, my juniors, my peers, people in training, in the first tenure of my training and the second tenure of my training. It's actually a lot of people. And I'll have to make a list and it will probably be a book of that list. But I'm grateful to everyone who supported me, who mentored me, who was there for me. And even for those who trained me, whether it was harshly or whether it was done nice or in a humbling way. I'm grateful for everything that has happened because it made me who I am today. Somebody who's resilient, somebody who will be in a leadership role, he'll be able to guide someone, will be able to make an impact, will be able to lead probably in some other way. So I am grateful to everyone and whoever I met along those 10 years because they made me who I am today.
Apurva ji, thank you for sharing your inspiring journey and experience. And thanks again for joining us today for this Our Heroes show.
I am indeed very grateful to you to make me part of this journey and thank you so much.
Thank you once again for joining us today. Stay tuned for more such inspiring stories.